So I'm Jeanette Adler. I'm an equine osteopath, EDO, and I'm a vet from Denmark. I've been about 5 years in equine practice in Scotland and Denmark, and then I've done this osteopathy training. So the last just over 3 years, that is the main work I've been doing. I've just been working as an equine osteopath. Basically, equine osteopathy is a manual treatment of, we basically feel for motion. We want everything to move as it is intended to move. So we test through the whole system, everything, all the joints, all the different tissues that we expect to move in a different, in a certain way, and then we work with that. So that is very much just the mobility and restoring whatever mobility has been lost at some point. So it's keeping everything mobile so that the body can perform at its best, really. It's all adapted from the human osteopathy, but that is, I mean, basically what they work with as well. So.
And how do you then work in praxis when you're looking at a horse to find out any problems?
So of course I get the story from the owners, I get the complaints or the whatever background is there, and then I examine the horse. I quite often see it moving first, especially if there is something that the owner in the history has already told, like when I lunge it or when I do this, or so I see it moving, maybe at walk and trot, and maybe see it lunging. And then we go and test the horse. So I basically just test the mobility from the tip of the ears and to the tail and the legs and the organs in between and the craniosacral system. So the osteopathy basically has these 3 components or 3 body systems that we work on. It's the whole skeleton, the whole biomechanics system, that is the part that we all think about when we're looking at a horse and see it moves, but it is also the organ system, so all the organs on the inside that needs to have some flexibility to follow that body and allow it to move. And then it's the craniosacral system. So how is the whole skull and the connection from there to the rest of the body? Is there any restrictions there that impairs the horse? If you were a person, you might say, I have pain on my shoulder, and then the shoulder might be a very secondary thing. So we need to find out, where does this come from? Why is the shoulder in trouble? And for the horses, it could be the same. They could show lameness, or they could just have restrictions in how could they, move in the front part, for instance. So we basically use all these, all the testing as a roadmap to see, when we know the neurology, where does the nerves run and how are they connected, then we can kind of interpret that and see, okay, so I expect I'm going to find a lumbar area with restrictions, so maybe the first 3 lumbars are restricted, and that is the innervation in the mare to the area around the ovaries, the whole attachment to the ovaries there. So for instance, I would already have an idea that, okay, there could be something going on the inside here. I would have to find more things relating to these organs, but that's how I would use everything I find as this kind of roadmap to find out, where is this coming from, and what do we need to address first before it makes sense to correct the lumbars and correct the shoulder and etc. Having the background means that I have the opportunity to use sedation if I feel I need it to do some proper corrections, but also when we're talking the organs, the most pelvic room organs, then it is organs that we can actually reach through a rectal examination. So that is in the mare, ovaries, uterus, it's bladder, in the geldings, it's semen cords, inguinal canals, it's bladder, and of course we can reach some of the intestines as well, but so that is something I can only do because I am also a vet. I mean, in most countries it would not be allowed to do that rectal approach as a non-vet. and then we do, some of the corrections that we have to do on the neck, and sometimes we open the mouth and palpate like the palate as well, to assess how it is all moving in that skull. So that is just things that you can help yourself by sedating the horse and make everybody safe and the horse comfortable, and yeah.
Which other benefits do you have being a vet and osteopath, combining them?
I think as the vet, you have just the vet background, and it's always in the back of your mind. And when you assess the horse, when you see it, if it is a horse that maybe have some lameness history or any pathology, injuries, or you just kind of have that with you as a baggage, that you can assess the situation and how much will I treat now, or should we treat this now, or should we wait, or so it's a really nice combination that way. So when we have, say, the craniosacral system, we're talking all mobility around the skull, but also around the whole spinal cord, and attaching through the meninges on the sacrum as well. So we have a connection basically from the skull, from the head, all the way down to the sacrum, so to the other end of the horse. And we have, of course, a lot of connections to what we call the parietal system, so the whole skeleton system, because we have the very back bone in the skull where we have a hole for the spinal cord running through. This is also the one making the top joint of the neck with the first vertebra of the neck. So it has a lot of connections to, of course, that whole parietal system. And then through the neck we have nerve connections to the inner organs, so that way we can have an effect on this occiput, so the bone of the skull here, to the organs basically as well, because that nerve will be running in right in that area back into the spinal cord. So if we have any kind of communication due to a problem in the organs, then we will get an effect on that area. So they are really just completely connected, and as an osteopath, the advantage is that you work on all three systems, because if you just address one of them, well, there will be problems left that will affect that area again. So when do we use osteopathy? You can use it, of course, preventive. We all have things that are not moving the way they should. We have as people, and the horses will have issues as well. And the body can compensate a long way. So ideally, you would kind of go through any horse before you start riding it or training it, or maybe even younger than that, because a lot of things you can get already when you're born or just growing up as a foal. So just kind of get a checkup on that body, so that the horse can actually perform as well the things that you ask of it. But unfortunately, most of the horses we see are, because there are now performance problems. So that is a lot of the ones we see, and it can be really almost anything, because, as I say, this body is so connected. Every bit of it connects somehow to everything else in that body. So a lot of the things we see are performance issues, and the really fun thing is to, as a vet, a lot of times you end up you cannot really move on with this case. It's maybe not lame, but yeah, it's not performing quite right, but there's nothing really to grasp. And as an osteopath, you just have some different tools, and you can address it in a different way. So it can be all sorts of performance issues, really, any kind of reduced performance. But also, I see some lameness cases, or behavior things, or it can be a lot of different things, really. Show jumpers, I think what we see a lot of is like lumbar area issues, it's hind part issues. But of course as well, we see a lot of the same things, but they do, hyperextend their lumbar area jumping, and so it puts a lot of pressure on that. The dressage horses, a lot of like more pole neck things, they are in that posture for a long time, you know, and so the different training of show jumpers and dressage horses, the dressage horses, it's a bit more the same thing over and over again, and the show jumpers, of course, the jumping is over, but the training might be a little bit more varied or not so intense. It is, but when you start testing, it is a lot of the same issues, really. They just affect the horse in different ways depending on what it is doing. So, I mean, we see a lot of sacrum disorders as well in dressage horses and hind part things, because if they're not fully in the correct form when you ride them, well, then they have to compensate in their hind part and in their spine, and so it just over time really wears them down a little bit, because they have to compensate constantly and do something in a joint that's not meant to do this, because it's supposed to be working in a different way. It can be that it's not really, that it's hard to get forward really, like, or that it's stiff on one rein, or that you don't have the proper contact in the mouth with the bit, that it cannot stretch and like really search and give you that contact. It can be if it jumps, when it's jumping, that it always kind of jumps to one side, or if the changes are difficult to one side rather than the other. I mean, any kind of thing that is worse on one side than the other will give you an indication, but also the overall, like, is this horse happy to do this? Is it happy to work and actively kind of take part in this? If it's hard to get it really forward and moving into your hand, well, then maybe it's because there is actually an issue making it really difficult for this horse. So I think it's all, try not to be too monotone in the training, and really do different things, and just use like the surrounding area. I mean, I'm from Denmark, we don't have that much exciting nature around us all the time, but just little things can be enough, you know, just go up and down over whatever little things you find on your way, and just use that to challenge that horse and the body, so that it